Welcome back to On the Move with Victor Rashid. This is Victor Rashid. It is Thursday, June 8th, and today we are going to talk about the South because Republicans have spent years trying to game and rig the system by gerrymandering the South, making it harder to vote by requiring harsher voting ID requirements and disenfranchising voters of color, and now young voters too. But more than ever before, it seems like things are changing. People are seeing right through the policies that Republicans are pushing. They're seeing through the culture wars. And today, my question for my guest, as you all can see, is Doug Jones, is how do Democrats reclaim the South from Republicans in 2024? Doug, it is so great to see you, and thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Victor, it's great to be with you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the question. Look, we reclaim the South the way the Republicans took it. One section, one district, one locality at a time. This is a long ball game. And candidly, and you know this, you and I have talked about this some, Democrats have not played a long game in the past. And we've let this get away from us. The redistricting has just gotten out of hand. But today, I mean, just right before we came on, there was a huge Supreme Court decision that is really going to help change the congressional maps in Alabama. And so I think with the demographics changing, we've got to really focus. And I'm telling you, the young people are at the heart of trying to get that change.
So there's so much that you talked about that I want to mention later in the episode, but let's start with that Supreme Court case that you mentioned, which upheld the Voting Rights Act, tossed out this Republican-drawn congressional map in Alabama. Walk us through the significance of that and how big of a victory that is for anyone who cares about democracy and voting rights, especially with this Supreme Court.
You know, Victor, it is huge. I cannot overstate the significance of this decision. It did two things. Number one, it upheld the Voting Rights Act in Section 2. That's about the only thing that's left of the Voting Rights Act where people can challenge districts, challenge other things on the basis of racial discrimination. It upheld that. And there was a concern that the Supreme Court would absolutely get rid of the entire Voting Rights Act. That did not happen. And that is a huge victory for voting rights across this country. Second of all, for Alabama and quite frankly, in the South, it upheld a lower court ruling at the district court level, a 3-judge panel, 2 of which were Trump appointees, by the way, that drafted a 100-page opinion saying that the legislative districts in Alabama that were drawn by our gerrymandered Republican legislature were a violation of the Voting Rights Act. That's a big deal because the population in Alabama, like the population in the South, is changing. It is getting more diverse every day. And with that comes opportunities for Democrats. And so this is going to give, I think, Democrats in Alabama an opportunity to either have a second congressional district. We have 7 total. And right now, Terry Sewell's our lone Democrat. It's going to give us an opportunity to have one more. Or at least be incredibly competitive. And in a House of Representatives that's only got a 4 or 5 vote margin, that's a big friggin' deal. I'm telling you, it's a really big deal.
Like Biden says, it's a BFD. But I want to ask you about how do you think this changes what Republicans across the South are doing? Because do you think this Supreme Court case perhaps maybe diminishes the efforts by Republicans in any way to, stop gerrymandering or suppressing the vote at all?
You know, Victor, I would love to say yes, but I think they're going to double down. I think they're going to push the limit, and I may be wrong. God, I hope I'm wrong. But I think what I've seen so far is, and just look, I mean, one would have thought after January 6th insurrection that Republicans and others in establishment Republicans would say, okay, we need to protect democracy. We need to protect the right to vote and a free and fair elections. And instead they double down across the South. So I don't expect this to go quietly into the night and just be another major decision that we can completely work with. They're going to have to fight tooth and nail. I truly believe that. It's unfortunate, but I believe that that's going to be the case. Because at this point, and I want you to think back, and the reason I say that, think back to some reports that we saw coming out of Nashville about a month ago. When they had a big Republican donor conference. And one of the lawyers who is the architect for so much of this suppression, so much of this subversion, was saying, the way we win in 2024 is to stop young people from voting on college campuses. Said that specifically. I had that confirmed by a local Republican here in Alabama. So we've got our work cut out for us. And it is a combination. And I want to emphasize this too, Victor, while we're on the topic. This is about more than Democrats. It's about more than progressive values. This is about our democracy. This is about the American
Yeah,
Republic
yeah.
that we've got to protect through the right to vote. That's what's at stake here. Regardless of where people are going to vote, we've got to give people free, fair access to the ballot box.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. But when you have a Republican Party that has spent so long trying to do this, how do you get Democrats? How do you get people to, what are the most important things you think people should be doing to combat this level of voter suppression? I heard that audio clip that you mentioned. I mean, they're trying so hard to limit young people, to limit people of color from voting. But what is the response from Democrats and our side and just anyone who cares about democracy right now in this moment where you have Republicans doing this?
Well, first of all, I think we've got to convince people that their vote matters.
Yeah.
You know, in the South, in a lot of these gerrymandered districts, people just don't vote because they don't think their vote matters. And they say that because their candidates don't always win. And we've got to convince people across the spectrum that their vote matters. Their vote is their voice. As John Lewis said, it is the strongest nonviolent way to affect change. And even if they vote for a losing candidate this time, that candidate or one similar may win the next time, or they just narrow the gap. You know, Victor, it's a lot different for a public office holder. Somebody is in public office who won by a 65 to 35% margin. It's a lot different for them, their approach to holding that office if they won by a 52-48 margin. And that's why people, I think, have to get out there. And it starts with a civic engagement at a very local level, school boards, city council, county commissioners, state legislatures, work your way up the top. The one thing that I would encourage people, every year, every 2 to 4 years, we see a huge voter turnout in presidential elections. But, you know, a huge vote, it dwarfs, I mean, it makes the votes for governor and for the state legislature and local candidates, it's just far and above. But where the rubber meets the road is in these state and local elections. And we've got to get people driving to the polls. We've got to get them to the polls in these state and local elections, because that's where their voices can be heard the loudest and they can make the biggest difference.
I mean, if there's anything that these past couple of years have shown, I think it is kind of the impact that state and local elected officials and races can have on our lives. And we saw that in Florida, Tennessee, Montana, especially in Tennessee and Montana with the banning of the state legislators. And I'm wondering if you think you're seeing a change, because you're in Alabama, if you're seeing a change in the South right now, and particularly maybe from Republicans too. What are you hearing from Republicans about what their states are doing and the policies, I guess, if you can even call it policies, that they're focusing on?
Right now, I think the Republican Party is they've got so many different factions. You know, the Republican Party in the South now, to me, is similar to what the Democratic Party was 50, 60 years ago. Remember, we had a Democratic Party 50 and 60 years ago that on the one hand was standing up for civil rights, and on the other hand, standing in the schoolhouse door. That's not really a party. And I think the Republicans right now they've got a similar problem. They've got this MAGA faction that is beholden to Donald Trump and that very far, the Steve Bannon wing of the party, and they're controlling a lot of this. And the problem you've got is a lot of good, I say good Republicans, I mean people that are traditional conservative Republicans, those that believe in small government and believe in a strong national defense. They're being relatively silent, and they're the enablers. They are enabling this takeover of the Republican Party. So that gives Democrats, I think, an amazing opportunity to come in and fill the void of sanity that should exist out there and protecting our democracy. We're also seeing some really interesting demographic changes in the South. Something that folks don't realize, Victor, is that you got 5 states in the South, you know, that and that's South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, where the Black population is increasing at a faster rate than the Hispanic population. And that is a big deal. Every other state, the Hispanic population is, but not in those 5 states. Here's an even more interesting one for you. Those 5 states have 8% of the country's total population, but they've got 25% of the Black population aged 30 and younger. Now that really gives the South some amazing opportunities, but we cannot take those votes for granted. That is not the kind of, massive block vote that everybody thinks. Democrats have to get out there and work for those votes and to make sure that everybody understands what we're doing, that it will affect their everyday life. It's an incredible opportunity that I hope we can take advantage of.
Yeah. And like you said, you cannot take those for granted. But when you see that changing demographic, is anyone really focusing on the things that Republicans are doing? I mean, wokeness, attacking the transgender community, are any of these issues top of mind for the people you're seeing and talking to on the ground?
Well, people, I think, look, Democrats always struggle with how to address culture issues. We struggle in part because we're a big tent, and we got folks under our tent that want to go all in completely as far as you can and talk about nothing else. On the other hand, you got folks like me who say, now look, we've got to go where other people are. If you want to bring this in, we can accomplish a lot. So I think Democrats are going to struggle for a little bit to try to get their footing. I think this whole war on woke is frightening because that is just doing nothing but that's what's dividing people, and it's stifling dissent. What Ron DeSantis and Trump and all these other folks are saying when they say that this is where woke goes to die, they're basically saying we don't want dissent. We don't want anybody speaking out against us, whether it is the African American community or Tinkerbell down in Florida. Okay. And so we've got to develop those messages and make sure people know that, no, you know what, we're a big tent, we're inclusive, and we want to make sure everybody has a shot, not to the exclusion of others. We want everybody to have this shot.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's terrifying. And when you hear people like Ruth Ben-Ghiat and other experts on fascism and authoritarianism say that this wokeness ideology is kind of the beginning of fascism, it should wake everyone up and alarm everyone, I think.
Everybody should be woke, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I want to ask you, I want to zoom out a little bit and talk to you about President Biden, because I know you've been in his administration. You have been an early supporter of his. As we head into the 2024 race, I mean, there's so much that he has done that has helped American people, but there still is, at least according to some polling, some disconnect between what he's been able to do and what Americans are feeling. What do you think he should be doing and his administration be doing to get that message out there and to get the American people to feel and kind of understand that this is what we have done for you, and this is what Republicans haven't done for you, I guess?
Yeah, look, I think that's going to come. I think Joe Biden is a brilliant tactician.
Yeah.
But most important, and I've known Joe Biden for 40 plus years now, and the first time I met him in the late 70s when I was just a second-year law student, I believed then that he would be president. I believed he would be a great president. And it took a little longer than I thought it would take, okay, just candidly. And I've laughed about that with him. But I think he was the right person at the right time and is doing an amazing job. But I also think he's I think what happened with the debt ceiling negotiations, Victor, is a microcosm of the way he's approached his presidency. And that is, you get things done. You work with who you've got. You don't want to alienate people too much publicly. You work with who you can and get things done and get things accomplished. There is going to be time, and I think that time is rapidly approaching, where he will have to be both the president and a candidate for president. And that's coming. And I think once that kicks in high gear, it's also going to be at a time when all of a sudden bridges are going to be being built, roads are going to be being built and repaired, schools are going to be being built, broadband is going to be laid across the country. You're going to have more groundbreaking for manufacturing companies, especially chips. Veterans are going to be getting better health care. The price of insulin is going to be down. So everything is going to come to fruition just at the time when he's going to start making his case. Right now, he has made his case that actions are louder than words. So that message is coming. And I do believe, I really mean this. I don't say this just because he has been my friend and I am very proud of him, but I think he's been the most significant and consequential president we've had since Lyndon Johnson. That's in my lifetime. I really think the work that he has done has been nothing short of amazing, and it has transformed this economy, and people are going to start seeing it and feeling it.
100%. And even against this backdrop, I follow you on Twitter and I read a lot of your tweets. People still underestimate President Biden, particularly the media still underestimates President Biden. Just last question, how do you hope he gets covered into 2024? Because I feel like time and time again, he gets underestimated, he gets challenged. People doubt his ability to get stuff done. What do you hope will change, if anything?
Well, there's two things I hope that will change. Number one, I hope that the media will follow the accomplishments and what is happening in the real world and not just focus on a negative number that might come out this month or next month, but look at it in the bigger picture. That's number one. But I'm going to tell you, Victor, I really think the media is missing the boat. They are covering the 2024 election as if it was a normal election. This is not a normal election. This is not going to be. You've got a candidate for president of the United States who is already under indictment in the state of New York. Likely, from whatever all of the tea leaves suggest, he's going to be on an indictment in federal court, impeached twice, got a $5 million verdict against him, who is constantly nothing but a source of grievances that other Republican candidates are buying into. And also, you've got a Republican primary that is just one of the more circus-like atmospheres that I've ever seen. But the media is covering this like this is just kind of normal. This is two parties that are going to go at each other on policy and substance. And it is not that. And I hope that the media will look at this for what it is. And at the same time, you've also got some other things. I really think that there's some other things going on with this third-party bids that are just completely wacko. I mean, there's no way that a third party can win this. And I'm going to tell you that what they're doing is they're going to raise a lot of money that's going to be a vote for Donald Trump. Any third party candidate vote is going to be a vote for Donald Trump. Any vote for Bobby Kennedy in New Hampshire is going to be a vote for Steve Bannon. And that's really unfortunate. And I hope that folks will wake up to that as well, that this is not, that there is something going on that they need to stop. And I'm hoping that potential candidates for this so-called third party ticket will look up and say, I don't want to be relegated to the dustbin of history in the same category as George Wallace was in 1968.
Yeah. I hope more people learn their lesson. And like we've said throughout this episode, it's up to all of us to get out there and do our part and vote. Senator Doug Jones, thank you so much for everything that you do. And thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Victor. Always good to see you. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Well, Senator Jones is always amazing, and just his kind of last words were chilling to me. Just, this is not a normal presidential campaign. This is not a normal presidential election cycle. You have one person who is under indictment, who might get indicted again, or is very likely to get indicted again, and he has also been impeached twice. I mean, this is just someone who isn't normal, and we can't treat him normally. I think that's the most important thing for the media, for all of us to understand, is that this is not the Republican Party that once existed 25 years ago, 10 years ago even. This is Donald Trump's Republican Party, and it poses a threat to the rule of law. And we saw this yesterday with Mike Pence's town hall. What you saw was Mike Pence trying to kind of, I think, channel this facade of someone who follows the law, of someone who respects institutions, someone who, is a family guy, someone who upholds traditional values. But on the other hand, he wouldn't even say Donald Trump's name or criticize him directly. You had Dana Bash basically call him out for saying, look, on one hand, you say that you support, holding people accountable in the rule of law, but on the other hand, you're not even willing to say that Donald Trump should be indicted for the crimes that he committed. And so on every level, you have this disconnect and this inconsistency in policy. And I think for people like Mike Pence and the majority of Republicans, you have them saying one thing right now, which is they're trying to make you believe that they're sane, that they're competent. But come June 2024 or August 2024, when the Republican convention wraps up and you have Donald Trump as the front runner, you're going to have all of these Republicans back in line supporting Donald Trump. And even if that's not the case, their policies are just as supportive. Yesterday, Mike Pence was talking about, a transgender ban. He was talking about abortions. He was talking about all of these issues that just kind of demonstrate this lack of connection with the broader American public. And it's dangerous. And I think for all of us, we have to realize that these people aren't normal. You have Asa Hutchinson, you have Nikki Haley, you have Tim Scott, Mike Pence, Chris Christie. Sure, they are, better than Donald Trump in the sense that maybe they're saner and they're, less combative and have a better temper than Donald Trump. But at the end of the day, their policies are still destructive for our country. And so that's why it's up to all of us to still support Democrats and get out the vote and turn out and vote for President Biden and down the ballot, because we're seeing this also in Republican states, just like we've mentioned with Senator Jones. This is happening across the country. It's not just on the federal level, and it's up to all of us to pay attention and really do our part. And just on a quick note before I end, there seems to be a lot of movement with the Donald Trump Mar-a-Lago case and also other investigations. We will keep you posted on all of that as we go forward. But I know we're running out of time right now, so I want to wrap up this episode and say thank you for watching. Tomorrow, you do not want to miss it, because I'm very, very excited about this conversation. It's someone who I know who's making a huge difference and someone who I think deserves all the attention she can get. She is Anderson Clayton from North Carolina. She is the first Gen Zer ever in American history to lead a state Democratic Party, and she is doing really amazing work, which I will talk to her about tomorrow, and how to again reclaim the South. So don't miss that. We'll be back at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on youtube.com/Politicon or on your Twitter feed. So on Victor Shi 2020, my Twitter handle, you can find us live every morning at 8 a.m. So don't miss that, and I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Thursday.